A gunshot cracked the silence of the prairie, sharp as breaking bone, and with it came the echo of tragedy. Somewhere between the tall grass and the dying light, a young woman stood bound to a weathered post, her wrists raw where rope cut deep. She did not cry out, not even as the sound scattered birds into the sky and stirred wolves from their shadows. They circled her with eyes that gleamed like coals, their patience cruel, their hunger steady. Yet she held her chin high, as though dignity alone could fend them off. She was not naive. She knew why she had been left there. Men who once called her useful, then cast her aside, had bound her in place to draw death close. They had not counted on her resilience. Betrayal stung sharper than rope burns, but it was familiar pain, as if the world had always mistaken her spirit for weakness. Her people had admired her beauty, but seldom her will. A man she once trusted had admired her smile, but abandoned her heart. And now strangers had admired her silence only to test how much torment she could endure. She refused to weep for them. She refused to give wolves that satisfaction. The horizon shivered. Hoofbeats trembled through the soil, not hurried but purposeful, like a storm deciding where to break. Out of the dusk came a lone rider, tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low. The horse's mane tore the air in waves of dust. He did not shout or call. He only lifted his arm, and the revolver in his hand spoke again. Wolves scattered at the thunder, their growls dissolving into retreat. Smoke curled from the barrel, rising toward the lavender sky, as if the weapon had exhaled the man's resolve. The rider dismounted with the slow assurance of someone who knew the weight of silence. His boots pressed into the grass, each step measured, steady. The woman narrowed her eyes. She had seen men appear heroic, only to reveal themselves cruel. His nearness meant nothing yet. She would not mistake rescue for kindness. He drew a knife from his belt, its edge gleaming with a patient light, and with 2 careful cuts the ropes fell away. He did not grip her arm roughly, did not claim her balance. He let her stumble and right herself, offering only his nearness if she chose to lean. His voice, low and roughened by dust and wind, drifted toward her like a hand outstretched. Safe now, he said, not in command, but in assurance. She studied him in the fading glow. His face carried lines etched not from age alone, but from endurance, as if life had demanded more of him than comfort. He was not the reckless kind who boasted of conquest. His silence carried weight. Still, mistrust curled inside her like smoke in the lungs. Too many promises had unraveled. Too many hands had turned cruel. Together they moved from the lonely post, their shadows stretching over the earth. Wolves lingered at a distance, their eyes still burning, but the man's presence shifted the balance. For the first time in hours, perhaps days, her pulse no longer pounded with panic. Yet peace did not come easily. By nightfall, they sat at a small fire he coaxed from brittle wood. Flames licked upward, lighting the space between them. He offered her a strip of dried meat. She refused, pride stiff in her chest. Hunger gnawed at her ribs, but stubbornness had kept her alive before. He did not press her. He simply set the food where she could reach, then leaned back, eyes reflecting the fire as though listening to its crackle more than her silence. Minutes stretched into something gentler. The smell of smoke wrapped around them. Her body ached from restraint, yet warmth began to seep into her limbs. She studied him more openly now. His hands were rough, but his movements were precise, almost careful. She recognized a man carrying loss, though he did not speak of it. And she, though silent, carried her own. In the firelight, it seemed for a moment their burdens looked at one another and nodded in recognition. The night grew heavier. Stars pressed against the dark, cold, and endless. She lay down near the fire, though not beside him. Sleep would not come easily. Every howl from beyond the grass sent tremors through her chest. He noticed. Without a word, he shrugged off his coat and laid it across her shoulders. She hesitated, the gesture too intimate, too generous. But the warmth settled over her, softening her resistance. For the first time since the rope fell, her eyes closed willingly. Yet just before sleep claimed her, a thought seared through. Danger was not gone. Wolves had been scattered, not slain. And worse still, Men who had tied her there had not vanished. Somewhere beyond the horizon, laughter and cruelty still breathed. And she knew, as the coat warmed her skin, that dawn would demand more than silence. Gunfire shattered the quiet dawn, a burst of violence rolling across the plains, and with it came the men who had left her for dead. Their laughter carried over the wind, cruel and careless, as though the night had not nearly stolen her life. She rose from the ashes of sleep, the coat still draped around her shoulders, and felt her heart slam against her ribs. The cowboy was already standing, revolver drawn, his silhouette rigid against the pale horizon. The riders came fast, 5 shadows cutting through the tall grass. They jeered as if the woman were nothing but a snare they had once set, now spoiled by another's hand. One of them called her worthless, another claimed she should have been torn apart. The words slid like knives into old wounds, reopening scars that pride alone had sealed. Yet this time, she was not alone against their cruelty. The cowboy's silence broke the moment, not with fury, but with a voice that carried like iron in the morning air. "You've done enough harm," he said, steady as stone. "Leave." They answered with gunfire. Dust leapt from the ground. Horses screamed. The air itself seemed to tear. The cowboy fired back, not wild, not reckless, but precise. One rider toppled, clutching his shoulder. Another wheeled away in panic. Smoke curled between them all like a curtain, and through it she watched his every movement. He did not waste bullets. He did not chase the fleeing. His restraint was more terrifying than their rage. The wolves had circled her once, their hunger a test of her endurance. But these men were worse, wolves who disguised cruelty as amusement. Her breath caught as she realized the cowboy was outnumbered. Fear clawed at her throat, but deeper still grew something unexpected. Fury. No longer would she be their bait, their entertainment. She snatched a stone from the fire's edge, flung it with all the strength bound in her body. It struck the nearest rider square on the temple, jolting him sideways, breaking his aim. The cowboy seized the instant, firing once more. The man fell. Silence swept in, thick as smoke. 2 riders fled into the horizon, vanishing like cowards. The others lay groaning, disarmed, the prairie reclaiming its quiet. Yet the woman's chest heaved with a storm that would not calm. She turned to him, trembling, half in rage, half in wonder. "Why?" she asked, voice sharp as cracked glass. "Why save me?" The cowboy holstered his revolver with deliberate calm. His gaze found hers, steady, unflinching. "Because no one belongs tied to a post," he said. "Because you deserve more than wolves at your throat." His words struck deeper than the bullet's echo, not because of their poetry, but because they rang without disguise. Her mistrust wavered, though habit fought to keep it alive. She had learned to see men as takers, never givers. And yet here he stood, demanding nothing, offering only truth. His next words fell softly, almost against his will. "You're mine now." Her breath caught. The phrase cut like a brand, a memory of ownership forced upon her kind. She stiffened, ready to defy. But his face, lined, weary, vulnerable, carried no hunger for power. In his eyes, the meaning shifted. Not possession, not a chain, belonging. A vow carved not in control, but in care. The fire between them no longer seemed just flame. It became a mirror, showing her what she feared and what she longed for. To belong not as a captive, not as a token, but as herself, unbroken, unbent. She searched his face, finding no jest, no cruelty, only the gravity of a man who had lived long with loss. Slowly, painfully, she let the walls inside her bend. Her hand trembled as she extended it toward him, not to be taken, but to choose. His palm met hers, rough and warm, and for a heartbeat the world stilled. Wolves might return, men might rise again, but in that clasp lived a promise stronger than fear. Still, peace was fragile. She knew those who fled would not forget. Vengeance rode fast across prairies, and blood seldom dried without leaving stains. Even as the morning light broke wider, washing them both in fragile gold, the horizon seemed to darken. Somewhere beyond, danger gathered again, sharper, crueler, inevitable. And she, wrapped in his coat and his vow, realized the story was far from finished.